Are you looking for ways to spiral your content so that you can review with students throughout the year so that they can better retain the information that they're learning and it's fun and engaging? Well, stay tuned because that's what I'm talking about today. Hi, my name's Angie. And I taught upper elementary for over 10 years, and I was always struggling to figure out how to get my students to retain information better. I wanted to try to come up with fun ways that engage them in the spiral review while also helping them to retain the information better. The way that I did that in my classroom is that I incorporated skills and strategies that they had learned earlier in the year throughout my lessons. I wanted to make sure that we kept touching back on it throughout the year so that they didn't forget about it while they were learning new things. When I first started teaching, spiral review wasn't really a thing. You just went through your lessons and you taught them and you practiced them. You would take the quiz, you would take the test, and then you would move on to the next lesson. Then I discovered spiral review and I knew that I needed to incorporate it. I knew that's exactly what my students needed in order to help them remember things better. If you're not accessing the information in your brain, then you're not going to continue to remember it when you need to re-access it later. All the links that I mentioned in this video can be found in the description below. So please check it out if you want to find out more about spiral review or the resources that I mentioned. So what is spiraling? Spiraling is when you take certain concepts and you sprinkle them in throughout the year after students have learned them. So once they learn them, you have your lesson, then you're moving on to other lessons where you're teaching them new things, but you're still sprinkling in that review of other concepts that you have previously taught. It could be in the form of a center, a station, independent work, rotations, or anything like that. Spiral review is not taking concepts that you teach, taking a test on them, and then never visiting them again. Students are going to forget them. You need to incorporate them again and again in order for them to really retain the information. Once I started spiral reviewing with my students, I saw a very big increase in not only retention, but on their assessments. And throughout the year, they were able to reconnect with that information and pull it out and use it again and again. One way that I spiral reviewed with my students was through the use of games. If it was math class, I would have some sort of math fact practice game for them because they always were needing to work on their math facts. And then I would incorporate maybe one or two stations that were something from the past that I wanted to bring back and refresh and make sure that they didn't forget it. Or I would choose topics that we were currently working on. I would choose the prerequisite skills for those topics. For ELA, I would always make sure there was some sort of prefix, suffix, root, station. I know that's so important in determining the meaning of new and unknown words. They can use those prefix, suffixes, and roots at least to give themselves a better understanding of the word. That's one station I would always incorporate in ELA. And then the same with ELA is I would pull things from past chapters or prerequisite skills for things coming up and make sure that they really had a solid grasp on those things so that when we're moving forward, they really are understanding the content. Another way that I would incorporate games is during center time, or we would have just review days before a big assessment or at the end of a chapter. If we were doing a review day at the end of the chapter, a lot of the spiral review would be from stuff throughout that chapter, but it's still spiraling that chapter through and making sure the students understand all components of a chapter before we move on to a completely different chapter, domain, or set of standards. Another way that I spiraled content with my students is through the use of morning work or warm-ups or something along that nature. And it gave them something to do when they came in the classroom. For math, I made math warm-ups that I had the students do when they would come in. And the beautiful thing about the math warm-ups that I made are that there are so many components to each day that are really built in to make sure that you are spiraling content for your students. I really purposefully chose each section of the warm-up for students to be able to not only spiral review, but pre-review content that's coming up or stuff that was past. They're not meant to take long. I don't want them to be spending all day on it. I want them to be able to get through it. We can go over it, or I can walk around and use it as an assessment to kind of see where they are on skills that we had previously learned and where I need to give them more support with skills that they they are struggling with. For ELA, I have some warm-ups that are more writing based. I love to do these in the beginning of writing or ELA as just a warm-up when they come in. They're holiday of the day writing prompts. So I basically went through the entire year and chose student-friendly holidays for each day of the year. And then I wrote writing prompts for each one. So the students, not only are they learning about the holiday or learning about the topic that the holiday is about, but they are then taking that information and applying it and answering some sort of question and writing and getting them going for the day. That's another thing. They can come in, they can get to work right on that. You could have it displayed on the board. And students are so excited about the holiday of the day. They just love finding out about all these interesting holidays. There's federal, world, international, and some just fun holidays. The students are really engaged in it, so it gets them writing more than they normally would. I know that a lot of times my students would complain that they didn't know what to write about, but now these holiday of day writing prompts, they're editable, so I can change them up and add or take away pieces that are maybe not relevant to my students, or to help them focus on something that they need more practice with. The holiday of the day writing prompts are great for that because they're engaged, they're interested, and they're writing about something they're excited about. So that makes the writing go so much easier. Another way that I make sure that I am spiraling through ELA content is through the use of close reading and engaging texts. I know that when I was teaching, a lot of times it wasn't that the students didn't understand the skills and strategies that we were learning when it came to applying them to a new text. I just always felt like the texts were not student friendly. They weren't texts that students wanted to read. That's one hurdle when you are trying to get them to practice the skills and strategies that you want. You want them to actually be engaged with the text. So I created close reading comprehension passages that are not only engaging for the students to read, but they review a ton of skills and strategies in the ELA standards. Plus, the questions are aligned to a mystery picture, and the students can use their answers to determine which colors to color on their mystery picture. So it's kind of a self-checking component within the resource that also gets students excited. So not only is the text interesting to the students and topics that they really enjoy reading about, but they are trying so hard to get their answers correct so that they color their mystery picture correctly. It's great for students and great for review because there's so many different strategies and skills that each set of passages goes over. And they come in so many different varieties. The students love them. They're great to leave for a sub, and they're just easy to print and go. You really just need a few crayons or color pencils, and the students are super engaged and learning and practicing the skills and strategies that you need them to. If you want to find out more, just check out the description and you can find more information about anything that I mentioned. So I know I mentioned Fun Friday earlier. Fun Friday needs its whole category because Fun Friday is a great way to spiral concepts. Sometimes I would just do Fun Friday in my classroom. Sometimes we would do it as a grade level and each teacher would take a different activity and the students would rotate through. When I did it in my classroom, I would just choose a variety of skills and strategies that I knew we had worked on already that I also needed students to practice. So they would be looking forward to Fun Friday, and all it was extra practice and learning, and they loved it. So I would incorporate games and activities and different items into the Fun Friday, but each of them would have a learning component and they would be practicing skills that we had previously learned that I thought maybe it's been a while since we practiced that. So I'm gonna pull that into a station. I'm gonna pull that into Fun Friday and have them practicing it again because we haven't visited it for a while. So keep track of which skills and strategies you practice and when, and whenever you see students struggling with a concept you know you've already taught, you can pull that into your Fun Friday and you can have them practicing it again. And the last way I'm going to talk about for you to incorporate spiral review in your classroom in a fun way is to incorporate physical movement. Sometimes you just got to get students out of their seats. You got to get them moving and learning and practicing. Sometimes I would just take cards from a bunch of different sets. So I would grab cards from adding fractions, and I would grab cards from place value or whatever skills I needed them to spiral or review. I would pull some and make my own set of cards. And so I would use those cards then for whole group, quick questions, and short physical activities that the students could get up out of their seats and be spiral reviewing the content. So if you pull a bunch of cards out that have yes, no answers, you could have students moving from one side of the room to the other, depending on what they think is the answer. Or if you have cards that have multiple choice, you could put them on the board and the students could go to a specific corner based on their answer. That's one way that you could just pull those cards. You can do quick spiral review at any time. You're waiting 5 minutes, you finished a lesson, and it's almost time for lunch. You could do a couple of these spiral reviews and incorporate them without very much extra work from you. I always had task cards and games and plenty of questions and problems lying around of stuff that I needed my students to practice. So I just pull from all of those things, and then I would use physical movement to be able to get them up out of their seats and moving. You could even do something as if it's a multiple choice question. You could do something as simple as, if you think A, get up and do a jumping jack. If you think B, stand up and sit right back down. If you think C, maybe you are going to run in place. And if you think D, then maybe you are going to stand up, spin around in a circle, and then sit back down. It could be anything. Just get them moving. A lot of times I would look out at my students and I'd see that glazed over look. So I knew I had to pull in some physical activity or something fun to get them moving. So those are some fun ways you can incorporate spiral review in your classroom. You can find all the links to everything and a full blog post where I dive into each of them more deeply. And you can find all that information and links and everything in the description below. And please, if you like my content, make sure to subscribe so you're notified when I put out new videos, and leave a comment letting me know if there's anything you'd like to see on my channel. Have a great day.